Oh my god, this is the second to last one of these I'm going to do on the Owl House. This is crazy.
I am!
Warning, spoilers ahead for the future. But I guess you knew that already. I wasn't expecting it to be, but just like thanks to them, For the Future is also readily available to watch for free on YouTube right now. So if you haven't seen it, click the link in the description and go watch it. Or don't, I can't exactly stop you. But even if you have seen it, I'd encourage you to just give it a view, bump up the numbers a bit, support the show, why not? As some of you may know, this episode was unfortunately leaked about 2 weeks earlier than its official air date. Now, as I have mentioned before, we don't get Disney Channel over here in England anymore, so I always have to pirate the episodes anyway, lest I be spoiled. But I do always make sure to pay for them later on when they eventually arrive on Disney+. But I was left with a bit of a tricky predicament here because of this leak. On the one hand, it feels pretty unfair to watch the episode 2 weeks early, when almost everyone else had to wait until the 21st. On the other hand, there's a chance that I could get spoiled on something by people spreading the leaks around. So eventually, I decided to compromise. I watched it 1 week early. In fact, I watched it just a couple hours before that trailer dropped. And boy am I glad I did, because about 2 days later, I got spoiled on what Luce's Palisman hatched into. Or rather, I would have been spoiled had I not already seen the episode by then. In fact, I wrote a big majority of this script over that following week, but I did want to wait until I got a general idea of the community reaction to this episode before I finished it off, just in case someone brought up something that I otherwise would have neglected to mention. So that's one of the reasons why this video is coming out a lot sooner than the last one did. And I just want to say, anyone who watched the episode early, I don't blame you in the slightest. But anyone who purposely spread stuff about the episode around, you are human garbage. But let's get started on the episode in question, and I just want to say, right off the bat, I love this episode. I really thoroughly enjoyed this one, and it may very well be my favorite episode since Clouds on the Horizon. And in a similar kind of way to Clouds on the Horizon, I think that For the Future did a very good job of balancing telling its own self-contained story and setting stuff up, well, for the future, for the finale. And because of that, it's been a little tricky to kind of figure out a structure for this video, because essentially half of it is its own thing that starts and ends in this episode, and half is what kind of feels like part 1 of 2. And there's a lot of overlap as well. So basically, I'm going to talk about the Hexside stuff first, and then hopefully that'll neatly transition into talking about character stuff relating to the group from the human realm, and then go into all the collector stuff and everything relating to that at the end, setting stuff up for the final episode, Watching and Dreaming. Everybody clear? Good. For the Future, roll the title card thingamajig. One of the main issues that I talked about in the last video on Thanks to Them was that it very quickly thrusted us into a new environment and a lot of changes to the status quo, and I felt like we didn't have enough time to get used to it. Again, I don't hold that over the episode. I realized that was just a result of simply not having enough time, which is why they did that little opening montage thing. But thankfully, that was not the case here. Or, it sort of was, but it wasn't a problem here. Because the difference here is that while there have obviously been a lot of changes over these past few months to the Boiling Isles we once knew, we're put in the point of view of the human realm group. This is all as new to them as it is to us, and that goes a long way to helping the audience not feel out of the loop. I mean, we are out of the loop, but it's only because the characters are as well, and they play into that a lot here. We are all equally confused by everything going on. In fact, we barely even get a glimpse into what the last few months have been like on the Boiling Isles. Pretty much the only thing we see is that flashback while the group is being caught up to speed by Matty Matt. Or should I say, Matty Man?
I am a man.
Best joke of the episode, by the way, and definite MVP of For the Future is the Matty Man himself. Everything with him here was great. I love that he's evolved over the course of this show to become someone who's, still obnoxious and still thinks highly of himself, but it's no longer annoying because he's now also kind and helpful to go along with it. And I love that he's doing, in this episode, exactly what he was doing in his first appearance, secretly working to usurp a leader so that he can take over.
I'm better looking, I have better hair, I'm deceivingly smart, and I want everyone else to do what I say.
Now, I just did 2 meme edits, less than a minute apart from each other, and they were both on the Matty Man. What does that tell you? And I like that bit when Gus realizes that the Matty Man actually has good ideas and would be a pretty competent leader. But I gotta say, as much as I liked the Mantholomew joke, I really don't think that this joke worked at all.
Attention! Would Captain Tholomew escort his guests to the council chamber?
Captain who?
Wait, has Tholomew been your last name this whole time?
Wow, that didn't land. That is just bad. That was way too over the top of the delivery from Gus there. They did a very similar joke to that back in Any Sport in a Storm, and I don't think it really worked then either, but this is way more egregious. It's not funny, and it barely makes any sense anyway. Like, if Tholomeul's his last name, is his first name Matt? And if so, why do people call him Matholomeul and not Matt Tholomeul? It doesn't work. They're drawing too much attention to it, and it just falls flat. And also, was this moment not supposed to be, the reveal that Boscha is the one in charge? Is nobody commenting on that? Here's how I would have done that scene. So Boscha makes her intercom announcement as usual, cut to everyone's shocked faces as they collectively shout, "Boscha?" Pause for about half a second, and then just have Gus's face switch from shock to confused as he turns to Matt and just quietly goes, "Wait, Tholomeul's your last name?" Matt smiles and shrugs. End of scene. Tell me that's not better. Go ahead, I dare you. Tell me. Okay, but let's move on. I've been talking about a single joke for way too long now. So Boscha is now ruling over Hexside along with these two new characters, Mickey and Roka. Just kidding, they aren't new characters at all. Yeah, I'm quite embarrassed to admit that I actually didn't see the Kikimora reveal coming. Yeah, well, I mean, I sort of did, but I got it wrong. See, after Mickey's line about Roka being her little sister, I thought that the big twist was going to be Roka is actually Kikimora in the Abomatron, and that Mickey was Kikimora's actual sister that we just hadn't met before. But no, I'm just dumb. It was way simpler than that. Mickey is Kikimora, and Roka is just the Abomatron itself, on its own. I mean, looking back now, it's kind of ridiculous that I didn't put that together. I mean, hell, Luce figured it out before I did. And on top of that, Mickey and Roka put together is literally just an anagram of Kikimora. Like, this was just staring me in the face and I didn't see it. So yeah, Kikimora's back again, to the delight of no one. And this is coming from somebody who actually likes Kikimora. And even I've got to admit, yeah, she didn't really need to return. At least not as a main antagonist for an episode. Although it was satisfying to see Camila hit her with a bat. And I gotta wonder, did she get that idea from watching Braxis earlier, or did she just know how to do that? Both are very plausible. But yeah, in regards to Kiki's return, I think I would have been satisfied if her last act on the show was helping King to find the collector in King's Tide. It was nowhere near enough to redeem her, but it would have been a nice conclusion, I suppose. But I guess it is in keeping with her character that, she never learns and she never changes. I mean, Folly's pretty much spelled that out for me. I should have expected it. And really, she only led King to the collector in King's Tide as an act of revenge against Belos. And also because, she was literally dying. I get that this episode needed its own threat for the self-contained storyline, but I think it could have worked just as well, if not better, if it was just Boscha being a tyrannical dictator. Because unlike Kikimora, Boscha already has an established relationship with both Willow and Amity. And I like that that was explored a bit more here, because Boscha was, quite literally sometimes, shoved to the side for most of Season 2. With Amity no longer hanging out with her and now with her Grudgeby teammates gone, of course she would want to become leader of the school, because she craves that attention that she would otherwise not be getting. This is exactly what she would do. Man, so far we are 3 for 3 in terms of consistent character writing. Not that the Owl House has really ever been bad at that, but it is nice to see that, as much as things are different on the Boiling Isles now, everyone is just being so typical. Side note, I was half expecting them to play into the fact that Boscha just disappeared partway through Labyrinth Runners. Knowing this show, I thought that was an intentional thing and it would be explained where she went in this episode. But no, she was actually just still at Hexside the whole time. She never actually went anywhere. I mean, I suppose she could have been hiding during the whole Emperor's Coven invasion. Yeah, sure, let's go with that. So once Boscha is able to confront Amity one-on-one, she literally begs her to come back and be friends with her again, to the point where it's borderline creepy obsession. This is why I wanted to wait until everyone else had seen the episode, because a lot of people have been inferring that Boscha has a secret crush on Amity. And I can see how you're getting there, and, it's hardly out of the realm of possibility for the show, but I don't think that's what this is. I think it's just simply Amity used to hang out with Boscha in her little clique. She dropped out, leaving just her and her Grudgeby teammates. They're also gone now. All of a sudden, Amity comes back. Of course, Boscha's going to be desperately clinging on to her. Also, I like that they pulled the same swapping places illusion trick on us again. It didn't last nearly as long this time, but it was just funny that they got us again with that. And I like that even though Amity's a different person now, she's able to get Boscha on side anyway and convince her to stop Kikimora, as that may lead to her getting her other friends back, eventually. It's a nice little sort of redemption thing. But I do kind of wish that a similar thing had happened with Boscha and Willow. I mean, they have a little confrontation in the hallway, and Willow berates her for how horribly she treated her in the past, but Boscha barely acknowledges it, and it just leads to Willow getting captured. And they do have a very, very brief moment after Boscha's aligned with the good guys, and it's made clear in that moment, along along with the whole desperately needing Amity back thing, is that what Boscha really wants is for things to just go back to how they used to be. And if she helps now, that want will be a lot closer to reality. But it would have been good if she'd, I don't know, like saved Willow from an attack from Kikimora or something. Would have made a nice parallel to her Grudgeby team saving her. I don't know. They don't have to make up completely or anything. It's just something to sort of chill the animosity between the two of them would have been nice. As it is, all their interaction is a way to make Willow more stressed and agitated. So I guess I'll move on to talking about that now. I was going to leave it until the end of this self-contained story section because, surprisingly, I have quite a lot to say on Willow's arc in this episode. Which is strange because on first viewing, I kind of thought it was a bit needless. I mean, this is the penultimate episode of the entire show. Do we really need to be doing this storyline? And if we are doing it, why put it on Willow? Why not someone like Hunter, who, just recently drowned and then lost his talisman? Or Luce, who's, still reeling from the aftermath of Belos' return and how responsible she still feels for all of that. It seems kind of strange that Willow is the one going through this whole thing about burying stress and inadvertently letting it consume her. And that's when it clicked. That's when I realized Willow is the perfect character to put this on. Because Willow, out of everyone in the group, Willow is the most overlooked. Willow is the one that everybody just assumes is fine. She's the one that everybody relies on. In a way, she's the glue. I mean, if you think about it, none of them would be here now if it wasn't for Willow. She was the first one Luce met, she introduced Luce to Gus, she had an established, albeit rocky relationship with Amity, and she welcomed Hunter into the Flyer Derby team. Willow holds this group together, and she knows that. And with everything going on at the moment, everybody's upset and on edge. Hunter is grieving over the loss of Flapjack.
Oh, and for anyone who's curious, no, my Flapjack plush isn't here yet, but I've placed the order now, so it should be here in time for the finale. Hopefully.
And he doesn't know how to deal with his anger properly. Willow tries to comfort him and cheer him up, but it's all still so raw for him. He doesn't really know how to feel right now. And Willow takes that as her efforts to keep everyone together aren't really working anymore. Willow feels pressure to hold back her own emotions, not let them come out, because everyone looks to her as the support. And if she starts to crumble, then they all crumble. And I get that. In fact, I relate to that quite a bit. I know I say I relate to character arcs a lot, but really what I mean is I empathize with them. But this, I actually do relate to. I know exactly how it feels to have everyone look at you as the stable one. And even though nobody means to, it does sort of make you feel like you can't let yourself show signs of instability. And so as much as I kind of brushed it off the first time, I now really, really appreciate the scene where she just loses control completely, and Hunter and Gus have to be there to support her. It's a really, really nice scene. I love it. One thing I've always liked that the Owl House does is showing a direct connection between magic and emotion. Heightened emotion equals heightened magic. And as Willow loses control over her emotions, she loses control of her magic. So not only does that make sense in terms of the show's lore, but it also makes a very good visual metaphor for what Willow's going through. How the vines are just consuming everything and not giving her a way out. It's all really good. It's really good stuff. So since I've been making these Owl House videos, up until now I've neglected to mention anything about Hunt Low. Partially because there hasn't really been anything up until now, other than just like a handful of moments where one of them blushes at the other. But the main reason is, if I'm being completely honest, I don't really care. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against it. I think it's nice and it's cute, and if it develops further, I'll be all for that. But as it stands, I don't really find myself caring all that much about it. It's nice that it's there, though, for the people who do, because clearly a lot of people do. Oh, and before we move on completely, I do just want to mention the whole thing about, Gus knew that Hunter was a Grimwalker after he used Grey's illusion mirror thing on Belos. I knew that was a theory going around, and so I like that it was outright confirmed here, because you look at the evidence, and yeah, it does make sense, especially when he says this in Thanks to Them.
Oh, Bailey is still hiding the fact that he's a duplicate and hyper-disguise, but Captain Avery is figuring it out.
I think he already knows.
That's pretty clever. I've said it before, but the Owl House always does this kind of thing the right way. It doesn't completely leave you to put all the pieces together yourself, but it lets you. If you want to, and if you look in the right places, you can work some things out ahead of time. But the show will always flat out explain them in later episodes in case you didn't. If you did, you can feel proud knowing that you worked it out already. But if you didn't, you're still caught up on everything eventually and not left out for not overanalyzing. That's just straight up the right way to do it. I enjoyed all the stuff with Luce and Camila. Luce is still determined. Luce is still determined to stay in the human realm after everyone's been rescued. She hasn't changed her mind on that. And I like that Camila is the one who has to convince her that that's the wrong decision. I mean, partially because she's the only one who knows that Luce is planning to do that. She still hasn't told anyone else. But it does show a lot of growth on Camila's part. Out of everyone, she was the one who most wanted Luce to stay originally. But now she's realized that Luce is happy here, and she's grown so much as a person just by being here and around the people she's chosen to associate herself with. But Luce is still convinced that everyone would be better off without her there to mess more things up. But as Camila says, messing up is a part of living. And after the little story that Gus and Willow told her earlier, she admits that she's made mistakes a bunch of times before. And then she fully takes responsibility for her biggest mistake.
I had a hard time growing up. I was afraid you would too. My biggest mistake was trying to protect you by changing this beautiful, good witch into something she wasn't.
And Luce realizes that that's all she really wanted. Her deepest desire that she spent ages trying to find was simply that she wanted to be understood. And so, of course, her palisman finally hatches then. And I love the little bit just before it's revealed what creature it is, where everybody takes a guess, and it's literally just all the things the fandom had been theorizing it would be.
A dragon?
A bird?
Oh, an otter! A spooky bat?
A snake?
I love that. I love that so much. It's so painfully clear that the writers and creators of the show are so in tune with the community. It's something that I've never really felt before when watching any other TV show, and it feels so good to be a part of that. It's something that I'm really going to miss when it's all over. And as much as I hate to admit it, it's so nearly over. And so with that, we will move on to the other side of this episode. And again, as most of this stuff is stuff that's going to be carried over into the finale, there will probably be a lot of speculation. So before I forget to mention it, who the heck was that in the in-between realm place right at the beginning? What was all that? Gut instinct was telling me that it was King, but obviously like an older King than the one we're used to. But then King appeared later in the episode and he still looks the same, so I don't know. I mean, it could very well still be King, but just like from the future somehow? I don't know. I'm definitely leaning towards King, or some kind of relative of King, but I don't know. It's very, very difficult to tell. But yeah, that was a very unexpected mystery setup right at the beginning of the episode. So I said earlier that we barely even get a glimpse into what the last few months have been like on the Boiling Isles, aside from the Matty Man's retelling. However, there was that pre-title sequence, and this might just be me being petty, but I honestly don't think we needed that. Even though I did love the rendition of Ida's Requiem and the Collector-esque variant on the logo, that was a nice touch, I've got to admit that. I actually think it might have worked better without that entire opening. The thing with the people of Bonesborough being turned into puppets would have been more of a shock and surprise, and the Collector turning Terra into one right then and there makes it clear as day what's been happening here, so that would have covered that. It would have made King's first appearance feel more special, as that would have been the first time we've seen him since the end of King's Tide. Same goes for the Collector, and Ida, and Rain, Hooty, and Lilith. In fact, Lilith's one is made a bit harder to follow, as we see her turned into a puppet in the opening, and then we see her later on, and she's not. And there's only like one small bit of dialogue that explains why she was turned back to normal. I know this is a very minor nitpick, and it's strange because I spent ages in the last video saying how we really needed to see more of what happened over the past few months. In this episode, I think we needed to see less. I feel like that's something that people are going to heavily disagree with me on, though. Like, we're already not getting enough. You want less? But seriously, if you just cut that pre-title sequence completely, I think that certain parts of this episode have more impact and are a bit easier to follow. Speaking of Lilith, I just want to comment that I love her new look. I like that her hair has reverted back to its natural ginger, and I like that she's had it cut a lot shorter. That's all really. I just want to throw that in there. What I do think really works is all these cool like art style credit sequences that they've been doing this season so far. That's great, I love that. It fills in gaps and it answers some questions, makes for some funny gags sometimes, and it doesn't intrude on the story because it's just a little extra thing once the episode's over. That's a brilliant compromise. And I know people have been saying like, oh, all these little images, these could have been individual episodes, but I think it works the way it is. I could maybe see them being turned into like little short things that they used to do for the Owl House. I don't know why they stopped doing them, but that would really work. Like once the series is over, just make a few shorts. That would be great. I think that would be the best solution, really. I can't really say I have all that much to comment on the Collector stuff. I mean, he's kind of exactly what we thought he'd be, a lonely child with godlike powers.
Behold, I am the Collector, and I'm here to add you to my collection.
I've been waiting so long to do that reference, you have no idea. He can get people to do whatever he wants, but he doesn't really have anyone. And it's nice the king is still honoring his promise. Not just because he's kind of scared of what the collector will do to him if he doesn't, but because he genuinely feels sorry for the collector and can relate to them. Ida, Lilith, and King have been secretly working to find a way to stop them, but King doesn't want the collector trapped for eternity again, and he certainly doesn't want them killed. But it is kind of very hard to properly convince a child to change their mind, especially one who is legitimately dangerous when they lash out and don't get their way. So now we're really heading into speculation territory here. I'm thinking that the solution to all of this, or at least something that would definitely help, is gonna end up being Camila. And here's why I think that. Number one, we went through the whole thing in this episode with Camila understanding Luz and not trying to change her into something she's not. Number two, the Collector's games are essentially a retelling of Luz's adventures, with King playing himself, Terra playing Ida, and the Collector taking the role of Luz. Number three, the Collector is currently under the quote-unquote care of Odalia, a character that has clearly demonstrated throughout the series to be a bad mother figure. Even in this episode, all she does is try and get the Collector to meet her on her level rather than the other way around. And she only does what she's told because she's scared of the Collector, not because she in any way understands them. But Camila would. Camila might be the key to putting an end to all of this simply by being there for the Collector like she is now for Luz. Oh my god, I genuinely think I'm onto something here, because really, that's the fundamental difference between Emperor Belos and the Collector. Belos, despite being a human, from Gravesfield no less, is nothing like Luz. The Collector, on the other hand, despite being this all-powerful magical being, is a lot like Luz. Or at least a lot like Luz used to be, a lost, misunderstood child. They don't really have any friends or anyone to really relate their experience to, and when they try and have fun and express themselves, it ends up causing other people distress. It's not malicious, it's simply because they're misunderstood. And I think that might be the way to resolve this. As cliche and cheesy as it sounds, what the Collector needs is family, friends, compassion, acceptance, and love. You know I'm right. I know you know I'm right. All of you watching this right now.
See if I'm not right.
This is why Camila needed to come to the demon realm herself. I mean, obviously for her own child's sake as well. But if this is something that plays out in the final episode, then I am a genius and you better all remember that I said this. Wow, I guess I did have all that much to comment on the Collector stuff. But I'll tell you who hasn't really justified their reason for coming back. Belos. Though I do like that basically the first thing he does upon return is exactly what he always does, manipulate someone for his own ulterior motive. Seriously, character writing, on point. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's interesting to learn that he's not only been keeping himself alive with palisman magic, but he's also been using the literal dead bodies of past Grimwalkers. Yo, and for the love of God, can someone please tell me what Belos says right here?
No. I'm ready.
I can't make it out. The English subtitles say it's not ready. The Spanish subtitles say I think I'm ready, and I can maybe hear it isn't ready, but it's really, really hard to make out other than the word ready. So, you know, leave a comment telling me what you think Belos said. And just one last thing I want to mention before we wrap up here. I really liked how many little callbacks and references there were to a lot of Season 1 episodes in this one. You know, the reprise of the line, "Welcome to the Owl House" from Episode 1, the Collector and King reenacting the ending of The Intruder, the photo classroom from Understanding Willio, as well as a bunch of memory photos from events of Season 1 and 2, the detention pit from Something Ventured, Someone Framed, even the half-eaten swing from Escape of the Palisman, and probably a bunch more that I'm forgetting about. I like that. It's nice to harken back to where it all started, right as we're nearing the very end of the show. Oh my god, guys, I just realized something. This isn't even in the script. This is just something I just realized. Luz is currently dressed as Azura, and she now has a functioning staff. There is a very high chance that in this final episode, there is going to be a reprise of the iconic "Now eat this, sucker." That is, honestly, if they don't do that, that would go down as like one of the biggest missed opportunities in history. But all in all, I am very interested to know how this is all going to play out in the final episode. Honestly, there's so much still left to wrap up. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't think they could do it. And I know it's going to be such a great moment when Ida, King, and Luz all finally reunite. I mean, you realize that the last time that all three of them were together was the very beginning of Clouds on the Horizon? It's been so long since then. We've got Belos taking over the body of Rain and, you know, sowing seeds of doubt in the Collector's mind that King is plotting against him, and Luz is here to take King away from him. Most of the Boiling Isles residents are still toys. There's quite a lot going on. And we have one episode left of not just the season, but the entire show as a whole. I've heard from sources that Watching and Dreaming is expected to come out on April 8th. That's less than 3 months away. And I'm torn between saying it can't come soon enough and saying that it really can. I don't want it to be over yet. But talking strictly about this episode, For the Future, yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. Maybe even a little bit more than thanks to them. At least initially. As I said, it took a while for me to warm up to that episode, but I don't really see myself cooling down to this one. I don't know if that made any sense. I don't think my opinion on For the Future is going to get worse, is what I'm trying to say. I think that it did exactly what it needed to do, and it didn't in any way feel rushed. It didn't feel like they were trying to squeeze multiple episodes worth of stories into one. It felt coherent. The characters were on brand and yet unpredictable. The animation was stellar. The fight scenes were well done. The humor was a hit and miss, as it always is, and the emotional beats were perfect. And aside from those very minor nitpicks that I mentioned, I have nothing but praise for the Future. Real top tier episode. So I guess there's nothing left to say except I'll see you all in April when we go over the final ever episode of The Owl House. Watching and Dreaming.
Oh my god, it's nearly over.